Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Mow Money, Mow Problems podcast, where we sit down with successful green industry business owners and we just have a conversation about their journey, their business or businesses, their successes, their struggles, and the insight from all of the above. My name is Matt Foreman. I'm the owner of Lawn and Land Marketing, and today we are joined by Grant out in Sarasota, Florida. And Grant has multiple businesses, so I will go ahead and quickly let him introduce himself before we start off this conversation.
Hi, everybody. I am, as Matt said, I'm based in Sarasota, Florida. Our companies are based in Sarasota, Florida. We service Sarasota County and Manatee County. It is GreenEdge Technologies, which is a plant healthcare company, and GreenTech, which is an irrigation, drainage, and then landscape design, build, and maintenance company. So I put irrigation and drainage in front there because that is the most important aspect of landscaping in Florida. And it's kind of dear to my heart. And it's something that I press very hard on when I'm introducing the company to different entities.
Awesome. So, Grant, you have two different companies essentially with GreenEdge and GreenTech. Can you tell me why you have two separate entities there? Is there anything that one does that the other does differently or doesn't do, or do they work harmoniously together? How does that ultimately work out for you and your companies?
They are definitely sister companies. They have collaborative. There's a collaborative nature and there's a supporting nature that takes place. The reason that Brendan, my partner, and I decided to have them as separate entities is primarily around the liability. The one is applying chemicals, or we like to use the word ingredients, into the landscapes, and there's always pause for thought around ingredients, especially when it comes to certain pesticides and herbicides. And so we just elected to have them operate separately, but they are very, very closely aligned and are collaborative and synergistic in nature.
Great. So obviously you have a lot of knowledge, having two companies doing multiple different things. Where did you get your start as far as the green industry goes?
I actually studied agronomy in South Africa. I was studying to go into citriculture and subtropical fruit. And I started to get very interested in trees going into my final year. And I then was able to transfer and come to the United States and study in Virginia Tech. My alma mater is Virginia Tech. And I've just, that has been a passion of mine. Always been interested in biology and plants, specifically plants. For hobbies, I'm into photography. I'm a true African. I still go back and forth regularly to be in the bush and to, be amongst, the native ecology in South Africa and the neighboring countries. But I've always just been very passionate about ecosystems, plant material, and biology.
That's great. So, well, I'm really interested in understanding the differences in what you learned over in South Africa versus over in the US. Well, like, is it are there different trends? I would assume that there's obviously a different ecology over there and different types of plants and everything. So, how did that transition, starting over there learning, finishing up your learning over here? How's that really helped you in understanding the entire kind of plant species that you ultimately take care of?
Well, whoever's going to be listening to this podcast, it's going to be very clear coming away from this that I am totally fixated on soils.
Okay.
So I studied extensively soil science in South Africa as an agronomist. I think that is the one thing that is missing from our education system in the United States is there's not enough emphasis put on soils and understanding soil structure and the physics around soils. It's actually a very misunderstood. I think we know more about Mars and the moon than we know about soils. So that's the first thing. But the one great thing about coming to the United States is I got introduced to the International Society of Arboriculture very early on coming to the United States. And the arboricultural industry in the United States is just par excellence. It's a fascinating community. It's a fascinating bunch of academics that are involved in it. And they have taught me a ton about landscaping. So, on one hand, I had very strong background in soils coming from South Africa. What I was able to develop was my understanding of trees and roots and how the landscape works together synergistically to be able to accomplish the goals that we all try to achieve out there in our day-to-day working space. Yeah.
So you said you went from South Africa to Virginia Tech, and I learned that you then spent time working in Rochester, New York. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So yeah, how did that all come
Yeah,
about?
so I graduated from Virginia Tech, and there was Virginia Tech is pretty from my experience. I can't speak for everybody that goes to Virginia Tech, but from my experience, they're very proactive in terms of placing, graduates, and I was able to get headhunted by a pretty not an advanced landscape design company, but a company that was doing some innovative things in Rochester. They actually were one of the companies that did the whole landscape restoration to the George Eastman House. So at the time that I was in Rochester, that's one of the projects that I did. They were very innovative in terms of the way that they went about landscape design. And so it was a great experience for me. I was able to climb the ladder up there. In terms of career, and I really had a great opportunity working in Rochester. I was there for nearly 9 years. But the one struggle with working up there is all that snow and the fact that you're basically working about 36 weeks of the year. I did get into arboriculture services, so I was out there doing, not necessarily scouting, but integrated pest management, or at least doing some estimating during the cold time of the year, because that's actually in some cases it's the better time of the year to do estimates around pruning or structure and things like that around trees. But the cold got the better of me. Being a South African, when I came to the United States, I've never really seen snow before. So that was my introduction. And so I as far as the cold goes in Rochester, I mean, Virginia Tech gets a little bit of snow on the ground, but nothing like Rochester.
Yeah.
So I decided it was time to come south and try and find a gig that could hire me year round. Yeah. But in terms of work, I could work year round. Obviously, working in Rochester for Oak Leaf Design, that was year round. But you got to find some other supporting acts around your job. Yeah.
Yeah, so when you made your way down to Sarasota, did you come here and find your business, or did you find another job here?
Yeah, I applied to a couple of companies in the area and joined up with Hazeltine Nurseries. Very fortunate, Stephen and Michelle Hazeltine decided to give me a look and a go, and I was with them for about 18 months. So I tend to be I don't like to be braggadocious or bragging rights and stuff like that. I'm a very kind of low key in that area, but I had a great opportunity. Stephen and Michelle gave me a great opportunity. I was able to develop the maintenance division over there pretty significantly. I was there for 18 months. And then I decided that, this looked really, Sarasota looked really good, great opportunity. And I decided to go out on my own.
Yeah. And no snow. So there's
Yeah,
always that.
right. Yeah.
Awesome. So I would really love to talk about, especially hearing that you helped grow that end of their division, is talk about your business model approach. So obviously you have two businesses. What is it and we can focus on one or the other or both if you'd like, but what makes them unique as far as the business approach in that?
Well, it's actually interesting. My business approach today is a lot different than when I came to Sarasota, and we haven't really spoken about the fact that I left Hazeltine's and started Grant's Gardens. So Grant's Gardens is a very large company in the area. The partners of Grant's Gardens exited about 2.5 years ago, and the new owner is in play and seems to be doing a great job with the company. My model, starting in 2000, September of 2000, was to build a very strong maintenance operation. Primarily, it was Grant's Gardens fine landscape gardening. We were taking the concept of gardening to it, and in actual fact, that's a very interesting phenomenon that I had to get used to. A gardener in England and in South Africa, or the old colonies, if you will, is a very prestigious position. A gardener is a very, very prestigious position. If you look up the definition of gardener, I think everybody would be pretty surprised that it actually means steward of the land, and it takes you into the whole notion of sustainability and things of that nature. So here you're a landscaper. So I had to get used to that terminology. But what I wanted to bring was a unique approach in the maintenance operation that we were providing fine landscape gardening. And I think we were actually able to achieve that. I will be very frank with you. I got that concept from Hazeltine Nurseries. They were doing this gardening concept, but they were doing very, very high-end and still do very high-end landscape installations. And they needed a very strong supporting cast to ensure the establishment of those landscapes and then the ongoing maintenance. So that's, in essence, is what I really took those ingredients and I brought them into Grant's Gardens. The goal was to build this. So I didn't want to do what Hazeltine did. They made a mistake. They put their landscape contracting out in front and then try to build a maintenance operation. I saw that there was a problem with that you needed to have strength in your maintenance before you go out and start installing fancy landscapes. So that was the difference in the way that I went about with Grant's Gardens. And so we built the maintenance division side by side with landscape contracting. And they climbed, they grew at kind of the same rate, all the while kind of keeping an eye on the irrigation division to make sure that was able to support both entities. And you'll find out, and I think you know this already, Matt, that over time, these two divisions start to become very independent-minded. They attract different people. And so there is a little bit of infighting that starts to occur inside companies that have turnkey operations like we have. So irrigation starts to, is a pinball between these two entities, and you've got to get that under control. You cannot have a situation where the one is dominating the other. And there's been many times in GreenTech, Brendan and my new company here, where irrigation has had a real struggle trying to deal with the maintenance aspects of irrigation and wet checks and smart irrigation technology. And then you've got the installation, the contracting side of irrigation. So I don't want to get too long-winded here, but I hope I've answered your question regarding where you were going with that question.
Yeah. And I do have a question as it relates to what you said, though. Why do you think that a company needs to have a strong foundation in maintenance before they can really thrive in just the landscaping and landscape design end of it?
Because you start to become, if you really think about the X's and O's on this, you start to become like a restaurateur where you're only as good as the last meal you cooked. Okay. Whereas if you've got an annuity, a reoccurring revenue stream coming in from maintenance, that's either coming off landscape contracting, or maintenance could be providing flow, opportunities in extra work or additional services on existing maintenance contracts. So they work hand in hand. This whole notion of synergy is very apparent. And the maintenance aspect is to ensure. Sorry about that. The maintenance aspect is to ensure that your projects stand the test of time. You don't want your project to become a disaster after 3 years because the client hasn't had the right infrastructure to maintain that project. And when we go into the design process here at GreenTech, that's the first question that gets asked to the client. How are you planning to maintain this project?
Mm.
What is your strategy around the maintenance of this project? Because if you're planning on not ensuring the number one, the establishment, and number two, the interpretation of the design is not being met in terms of your maintenance kind of procedures that you're going to have, that project is going to end up running into trouble. I'm not going to exaggerate here, but there's going to be some problems. Yeah.
What happens if they don't know how to answer that question when you ask them, how do you
Well,
plan
then
on maintaining this?
Well, then we provide them. We start to lay down the path, the map of
Mhm.
where this is going to go. And so with what's happening now, if we talk relevance to 2024, we have a labor problem in this part of Florida. I can't speak for the whole of Florida,
Mm.
and we have to start maintaining landscapes that are labor sensitive, that understand that labor inputs need to be considered right out in front. And if it becomes too intensive, then we have to think that through and understand how we can value engineer the design to be able to cater to that. And then and so this is actually rolling into a whole nother conversation about sustainability and inputs around fertilizer and water and over planting landscapes, because that's the other struggle that we have in Florida, is that we haven't in terms of the client is of an age that they are looking for instant gratification. Okay, because we're coming to a retirement state, if you will. So the tendency is to overplant, to not provide enough resources for that landscaping long term. And then 3 to 5 years into that landscape, we start to see decline or issues with that landscape because poor resource allocation was defined. Yeah.
So, as it relates to these problems that you mentioned, is that a green tech problem, a green edge problem, or is it a collaborative between the two teams to ultimately solve these for your clients?
That's exactly right. So that's the great thing about GreenEdge, is that we provide that establishment protocol or procedures, policies and procedures that we have in place for our clients around maintenance, or the establishment. Sorry, I misspoke there. The establishment of the landscape. GreenEdge has a huge part to play. And now we talk about soils and bacteria inoculation, fungi and bacteria inoculation into the soils. That's a very, very big part of what GreenEdge does. So we come in post installation and do the application or deployment of ingredients that are going to help promote soils and roots and develop a soil ecology that's going to be able to advance the health and vigor of that landscape into the future. And that's really important. That first 6 to 9 months, we're doing some aggressive application of ingredients in order to meet that goal.
So, obviously, you're very well versed in everything as it relates to your services. And one thing I've noticed about you, having known you for several months, is that you love to educate your clients on these things. Um, to the point where you'll take phone calls and educate them on over that. You'll meet them in person. Do you have any other channels in which you educate your area, your just kind of the community?
No,
No,
it's primarily, obviously, look, the website or blogging. I mean, before I met you, Matt, I was an active blogger. So I would use blogging as a technique. But in terms of one-on-one with a client, having that interaction, it's really over the phone,
Hmm.
or it is. And I mean, I'll take calls from people I mean, we get a lot of calls into GreenTech from the East Coast. Like they're looking for a specialist company that's going to be able to come in and do palm injections, for example.
Hmm.
And if I'm driving and I'm not on the phone, I'll take that call and I'll run them through some ideas of what I think they should be
Yeah.
doing in terms of dealing with it. So I just feel it's important that because our industry gets a black eye sometimes for there's a tendency to oversell and underdeliver. That tends to be a very common phenomenon out there, and I just want to kind of correct some of those those thoughts and ideas that are coming from the marketplace.
Yeah, I get that too. I mean, if there's going to be one sort of parallel between industries, yours being obviously the green industry, mine being more around the marketing. Yes, I'm niched down into the green industry, but from a digital marketing standpoint, yeah, there's we also have that black eye of you'll I'm sure if you've worked with other digital marketing agencies, there is that like, oh yeah, we'll promise you the world thing until you start working with them. And it seems like a lot of times it falls short. And so that's kind of the one thing that I noticed that whenever I'm working with a new customer is that I have to kind of almost apologize if they've had worked with another digital marketing agency for falling short and try to earn their trust over time. So I
Right.
absolutely get that. And yeah, that's going to be super true across probably most industries because there are going to be people that try to cut corners and try to save costs. And that's why I'm was really excited to interview you today because I know that you are very passionate about your field and everything that you bring to your community. So with that, have you ever thought about another channel of getting your wisdom out there? Obviously, here on this podcast, I mean, we can promote this, and you're obviously going to continue to come off as the expert. But I think you would be very well served in getting your knowledge out there through other online channels, whether it's like a YouTube channel or a newsletter, or even if there's maybe something in print. Have you ever been in like a magazine, like Lawn and Landscape magazine, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, through the years, I've been interviewed a lot, and we've won a number of awards and things of that nature, and we've been very fortunate to be involved in some key projects, some landmark legacy type projects in the different communities that we've been working in. I think the biggest struggle is that when you're in Florida, you're working year round. There's no downtime.
Mm,
And so my role is sales, consulting, and to make sure operationally that I'm available to the, everybody that works in the company if they need my help. So I'm very active in the company throughout all levels, from weeding, walking up to the gate of a HOA and seeing weeds. I'm pulling weeds out of the ground. I've got a toolbox in the back of my truck, and I got all different types of things going on in there. So for me to be able to get involved with something that is somewhat segued away from what I do, I think that would be a disservice to the companies. And it's two companies that I'm actively involved in.
yeah.
I will say this, Matt. I had an amazing experience in Rochester, New York that never been repeated, that I think would serve Florida well. And I think I understand why there's some issues and why Florida struggles to do something like this in different parts of Florida, I should say. There's a phenomenal garden show that takes place in Rochester that started when I was there. It came from nothing. A bunch of guys and girls got together, and we started the Greater Rochester Flower Show. And it was a way in which you came through the winter, planned your booth, and you did a landscape design inside the large auditorium that's there in Rochester. What that did is, during the setup and during the actual show, people from the industry got to meet each other and
Mhm.
got to become, drop their guard a little bit, started to trust and discussed things like pricing, things like different services, different ways in which the particular companies were successful or not successful,
Mhm.
and how they were recruiting, and all these types of things. Who was a damn good mechanic in town? Who did you go and take your trucks to get serviced? So that really helped Rochester tremendously. And if you go to Rochester, you will see that there's a very interesting collaboration and synergy that takes place amongst the landscape community. And I think we need more of that in Florida, especially as it pertains to sustainable landscaping
Mhm.
and things like irrigation and the technology, the smart technology around irrigation, and then native landscaping. I think native landscaping gets a really bad black eye, and using black eye analogy again here, where there's a tendency for the rank and file here in Florida to just use what is available and what's easy to come by. And I think, and that does us a disservice. So there was just some thoughts I had around that.
What do you think it would take to create a kind of that ecosystem that Rochester had around the Sarasota area?
It would mean finding it is, first off, you'd have to find that, there's an auditorium on Fruitful Road that you could possibly use.
Like,
And
you put
then
some thought into it.
I
Okay,
have.
good.
I think you could do some outdoor gardening and scaping like that, and landscaping like that. The problem is, again, we come back to the fact that Florida works year round.
Mhm.
And for an owner to pull people away from profit and servicing clients is a struggle. It worked in Rochester because you had a downtime of that, during the winter and where there's a lot of snow on the ground. Hey, you want to keep landscaping, this is one way to do it. But I
Mhm.
think there are some other ways of working. There is always a tendency to want to work with the University of Florida, and I don't think it always has to be the University of Florida. I think that we can find ways with maybe within garden centers or botanical gardens, things like that, where we can try and create synergy and collaboration, and then obviously disseminate information that's going to help companies, number one, stay relevant, and number two, being progressive. I think that's always important in business. If you're cutting edge, you're going to reap the rewards by being cutting edge, and that's something I've always lived by. I want to always be cutting edge in everything that we do, because that just puts us out in front. People want to meet people that are cutting edge. I want to know what this company is doing. Maybe there's something out there that they've got in their mix, in their toolbox, that's going to make my yard look unique and
Mhm.
have better curb appeal, or whatever the case might be.
Yeah. Well, I'd be really interested in, and we could save this for a conversation for another day, but if you, do wanna continue pursuing that, and, if you need any kind of, like, outbound reach or outbound marketing, I would love to talk with you about how we might be able to help kinda get that word out, because I think that's a great idea, and I definitely understand the struggle of needing to make payroll for everybody year round. But yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. I think that would be a really cool way to build up the local community and all those within that industry. I think that's a phenomenal idea. Um, so getting back to your businesses, and I would love to learn, if you have any off the top of your head, what mistakes have you been made? Have you made? Because one of the people that are going to be listening to this are those that are just starting up. Obviously, every business owner makes a mistake somewhere. So is there anything that you can think, going, if you could go back in time and fix this or tweak this or learn this faster? Is there anything that kind of comes to mind that you can share?
There's lots of things that I can talk to you about landscaping and horticulture and arboriculture, but I think the one thing that, because I'm kind of getting to the twilight time of my career, I've only got a couple of years left and then I'm going to be retiring. I think one of the things that's interesting for the landscape industry, and look, from the farming industry, this is really, really, really important, is how do you create the structure inside your company to promote from within? Um, that is tough, especially if somebody has hit the ceiling and you've got to try and convince them with all your abilities, that your convincing abilities that you might have, why it's important for them to continue to strive to build to build their careers so that you're able to promote them within the company. And it's tough sometimes to be able to impart that information or that seed to get somebody to take that leap of faith. Okay, because that's the struggle. And I find that very relevant here in Florida, this leap of faith from the employees to the owners, the ownership. Are you really going to hold your promise? All those things that go in with human relationships around employee-employer situations. You've got leverage and power over somebody, and let's not kid ourselves. Okay, and then how do you pave the way for them to become the owner one day? That would be my ultimate goal, is to take somebody just at 18 who's
Protege.
going for a job for the first time, right? And they stay with your company until they become the owner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I could see where that's a hard thing to do, especially if you want them to. Obviously, they don't need to be a clone of yourself, but they
No.
have to have similar goals, similar passions, and also be somewhat business minded and entrepreneurial. So I could see where that's a tough one. So with that, I mean, have you looked within house, like upgrading people to different positions while still kind of maintaining the passion that you originally brought them on for?
Well, to continue in that conversation, right? So how do you, how do you solve that? So the mistake I have made, and I've made this many times,
Mm,
is it's so important, just like it's important to have a marketing guru and a social media guru inside. You're almost like a technical person inside the company that's helping the company grow, because technology is so important. I don't care who you are, whether you're a farmer or a landscaper or, a restaurateur, you need technology today in order to advance.
mm,
So the same thing goes for hirees and recruitment, is to have a human resources person that really understands your industry and how to go about finding the right ingredients that are going to attract people to the company, and then to be able to, if they're excellent candidates, are you able to fast track them to move them into higher positions, better earning, better benefits, and then ultimately to become part of the management team, or the management structure that runs the entire operation. And those, I will tell you, Matt, there's a lot of great stories out there in America that has this phenomenon, that I've seen my competitors have done this. I just have never been able to do it. And I don't, I don't, through my evolution, I just didn't seem to find the right synergy or collaboration with other team members to be able to promote this endeavor. Bottom line,
Yeah.
and I think it takes a special person, both in that owner that hire that person at 18 and groom them all the way through until they become a part of the ownership team of that company.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can imagine that's really frustrating, especially with how ambitious you've been just from the get-go with the companies that you worked for, the ones that you founded, and like with Grant's Gardens and now GreenTech and GreenEdge. So I can understand where that's probably frustrating, because you're probably just, yeah, you're looking for that person to hand things off to. So, um, and as you mentioned, moving into the twilight years, I mean, if everything goes well, if something does fall into place, like what do you think's next for you and the businesses, but both businesses?
It's growth. It's just the right growth to get it
Mm,
to where we feel it can get up on plane, and maybe that person is in the sides right now, that we're
mm,
going to be able to, because we've got a great management call right now, that somebody's going to take that leap and go, okay, I'm the guy that's going to start being the flag bearer from, moving from this point on, or whatever the case
Yeah.
might be. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. So when do you think you'll be calling it?
Not anytime soon.
Not
I'm still,
anytime soon.
no, I still love what I do. I love coming
Good.
into work. Yeah. It's a great industry. I have no regrets.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure to watch you, learn from you, and I think you're doing great. I know obviously no business is going to be without its frustrations for sure, but I can tell that obviously like from the moment I met you that you're very passionate, but then getting to kind of talk about your history and even on this podcast, it's always been there. So it's great. And I think that's a great way um to kind of look for and pinpoint who to bring on and like I said, find people with similar passions. Sure, it'll probably be hard to find somebody as passionate as you, but there are people that are going to have strengths where you find your weaknesses, and so I think that'll be yeah, just
You
really
know,
promising.
something else that I can say here, that a lot of people are very, what's the word? They're very cautious around getting involved with partners. I hear that all the time. Oh my God, you got a partner, so I'll just say this. I was able with partners to grow a pretty successful company in Grant's Gardens,
Mhm.
and left them and started GreenEdge and GreenTech. And and within 5 years or so, I'm basically right back again. So from where I was with Grant's Gardens. So Brendan and I have done something right here. We have been able to bring in the right people. My only comments earlier was to be able to bring in young people,
Mhm.
okay, and see them stay in the company and groom and grow all the way through. I think maybe I didn't communicate very clearly where I was going with that, but that is, and then being able to provide the support mechanisms around people like this so that they can grow, they can become certified arborists, can become a certified pest operator, can be, get all these certifications. I mean, I'm sitting in the company with like 6 or 7 certifications, and I've got to keep up with the CEUs and all of that. It's like it gets overwhelming sometimes, but it is all part of the growth, and it's all part of what you need to have in your chest, in your toolbox, in order to be able to provide all these different services that we provide. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. And I appreciate you sharing all that. I mean, you are I think a very rare case. I mean, obviously as a business owner, you can say you're an entrepreneur. Most business owners are, but I think the rare thing about you is you're one of those rare serial entrepreneurs in the space. And having started multiple businesses, successful ones at that. So yeah, I think you're just a wealth of knowledge, not just in the green industry, but as a business owner as well. So no,
Appreciate it.
I appreciate you sharing all that. It's really cool, and I'm sure those listening are gonna be able to take a lot away from this. So well, Grant, I again I appreciate your time. I think that pretty much, or we're getting close to time there, but I think that's gonna wrap up another episode of the Mow Money, Mow Problems podcast. So I do want to thank you again for being here. And like I said, I hope our listeners kind of found, I'm sure they found a lot of value in all the things that you've said, knowing that you're not going to be without struggles, but there's always a way to power through that, and there is going to be that success on the other end. You just kind of have to stick with it. So thank you for kind of sharing your journey on all that, and I'm going to just kind of welcome all of our listeners to go and check out more about Grant. You can find a lot about him. You can just Google his name and he'll pop right up. You can check out GreenEdge. You can check out GreenTech online as well. All very successful businesses, and yeah, I just kind of encourage everybody listening to stick with it, learn from successful entrepreneurs' strengths, weaknesses, mistakes, and things that they've learned along the way. So everyone, thank you for listening to this episode. Grant, again, pleasure having you. Pleasure being having the ability to continue to contact you and reach out to you for just this wisdom. And so I'm really honored to have you on this podcast today.
Thank you, Matt. Much appreciated. And thanks for reaching out.
Of course, of course. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. All right.